Welcome to Murder with the Missus. I'm Darren.
And I'm Amy, and today we're going to tell you about shared psychosis.
Don't forget to smash that like button and go and check us out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, and Facebook. Like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to tell your friends.
You'll have to excuse us because we're a little congested.
'Tis the season.
So we might do the whole Phoebe Buffet thing where we sound a little, mustic issue.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, if not, my bad. Sorry for your ears. We're doing an episode on Friday for the Mandela effect. So in keeping with the weekly theme, I figured that mass misremembering would go along with shared psychosis. If you haven't heard of the term, folie deux, or shared psychosis, it is a rare psychiatric disorder where delusional beliefs are transmitted from one person to another. The French term means madness of two or madness shared by two. I've seen it multiple ways, but it means the same thing.
That's the name of the new Joker movie, right?
Yep. And that's a good example of this. Some psychiatrists use this disorder to explain how cults are a thing, saying a primary person experiencing delusional beliefs can influence a secondary person or people. Secondaries can have emotional immaturity, dependence on others, social isolation, mental illness, impaired intelligence, basically someone the primary can take advantage of or easily manipulate. It's sad, and it happens, and they can't control it either. But we aren't going to dive into cults today. There are other cases that involve much fewer people.
Yeah, so nobody's drinking the Kool-Aid today.
No. You can put your Nikes up. We're good. We can start.
No white shoes.
No white Nikes. No.
Okay. No white tennis shoe cult.
Yeah, with our jumpsuits.
Yep.
Get your tracksuit. We can start back in 1895 in Ireland. 26-year-old Bridget Cleary got bronchitis. She was being treated for it. She had medicine to take. They were trying home remedies too. Family and friends were coming by to visit and help take care of her. A few days in, a priest came in and read her last rites and gave her communion. She wasn't doing well at all. But then she went missing. Her husband, Michael, told police that fairies had taken her. 6 days later, her body was found in a shallow grave, and 9 people were charged in her disappearance. All were charged with wounding her, but 5 were further charged with murder. At trial, it came out that the day before she was reported as missing, Michael had sent for Father Ryan. Father Ryan said that Bridget was agitated but alive. And Michael said he had no faith in the medicine that the father had prescribed her, so he had stopped giving it to her altogether, saying something like, people may have some remedy of their own that might do more good than the doctor's medicine. It came out that Michael had convinced Bridget's dad and the others that Bridget had been replaced with a changeling. So that night, after Father Ryan left, they attempted to get her back from the fairies. Urine was thrown on her. Michael tried to force feed her something. I don't know exactly what that was. But then he threw her down on the kitchen floor by the fireplace and was menacing her with a piece of burning wood. When her dress caught on fire, he threw kerosene on her. It wasn't clear if she was dead or not when she was set on fire. But her death has been described as the last witch burned in Ireland.
I was just fixing to say, was this like a witch?
Yeah, it's kind of like, yeah. It'd have to be.
It's like crazy because even her dad helped.
Even her dad. Yeah, he had convinced her dad. Ugh.
I was like, man, you went way back, like 18,
That's
what?
the 1895.
1895. I was like, good night. This is like Blair Witch trials and shit.
It's the first case I could find that was attributed to shared psychosis. Yeah.
Oh.
So it's been happening for a very long time.
Gotcha.
And back in the day, they had a huge belief in fairies and
Blair Witch and Salem Witch trials.
The Salem Witch.
Salem Witch trials, yeah.
Yeah. That was in the 1800s, yeah.
Yep.
That goes back to medieval times, though, the witches. The Salem witch trials were in the 1800s, but yeah, the witch belief goes way back.
Yeah.
And in this time in Ireland, they had a huge belief in fairies and changelings, and people didn't want to take any chances. And I think this was more of a fear case, where Michael said she was taken and replaced by a fairy, and out of their fear of changelings and fairies, because of the lore, that's why they helped try to get Bridget back. It's wild.
So they was afraid of like Tinkerbell.
They were. Put your wand up, lady.
Quit throwing all your fairy dust everywhere.
This glitter It won't go
We
away.
ain't going to Never Never Land.
I swear it was the fairies. I wasn't at the club. Okay, sorry. This next one involves the silent twins. It's June and Jennifer Gibbons. They were twins who were born in Yemen in 1963, so now we're a little more current. They did move when they were younger and ended up in Wales. And they kind of had their own language, which we see a lot with twins or people who are close, because me and one of my cousins used to have our own language. And it's described as a sped up version of a certain Creole dialect, but they also had a speech impediment, so really no one around them ever understood what they were saying, even when they spoke in regular conversation, not even their parents. So they just stopped talking to everyone, except each other, of course, and their little sister Rose.
Yeah, I mean, the whole having their own language, that's actually been proven and everything, where some of them have their own language where they communicate back and forth with like twins.
Yeah, some of them don't even have to talk. They just know.
I mean, even in the movie, was Jack and Jill,
Yeah.
Adam Sandler movie.
Yeah, they did have their own language.
They actually was at the end of it. They had all the twins that were like
Doing their own
thing and everything.
Yeah, it's a thing.
So how old were they when they stopped talking to the people?
They were 3 years old when they stopped talking to people.
Wow.
That's why they're called the silent twins, because they just stopped.
And they just talked to each other?
Only to each other, and then their little sister Rose.
Oh, okay.
They would talk to her too. And they were the only Black children in their community at this time, so they were bullied in school when they got to school age. And when that started, they didn't even read or write either. They just completely withdrew from everyone. Their school had vaccinations one day, and the medic noticed their odd behavior. They're not talking, they're mimicking each other with these weird movements, and they appear basically like robots going through the motions. So the medic told a local child psychologist.
What about the parents? Were they around?
Yeah, they both were there. They had other kids, jobs, busy lives. And I guess they just thought, hey, this is their thing, and just let them do whatever. Now, I didn't see anything saying that they were abusive or anything.
But I mean, as far as like the kids were in school and everything, I mean, they was normal as far as like
Yeah, they had a normal home life.
Doing their homework and stuff like that, right?
They were, and then they stopped. They stopped reading, they stopped writing, they stopped everything.
Oh, okay. So they just stopped associating. Period.
Yes, they just withdrew from society.
Okay, I got you.
But the twins did have to see a string of therapists, and no one could get them to start talking to actual people. So they decided to separate the girls, sending them to separate boarding schools. But instead of this forcing them to talk to other people, they both became catatonic. So then they even stopped moving and stuff. They let them reunite, finally, when they were teenagers, and they spent several years basically in their bedroom at home writing plays and stories. So they knew how to read and write. They knew how to do all these things. They just chose not to. At 16 years old, they did a mail order course for creative writing and wrote a lot of stories. Most of them were oddly set in Malibu, California. I don't know why that struck me as odd because they'd never been to the United States. It just must have been someplace that fascinated them. And it said that their characters were young men and women who exhibit strange and often criminal behavior. And they have had published works. The most current one was one of Jennifer's being published in September of this year. But as teens, they started doing drugs and alcohol, committing petty thefts, vandalisms, and arson. So they were admitted to Broadmoor Hospital for the criminally insane and were there for 11 years.
Damn.
Yeah, long time. They had an agreement that if one of them died, the other had to speak and live a normal life. And the longer that they spent in the hospital, the more they felt like that was going to be necessary. They decided that Jennifer would be the one that needed to die. And in March of 1993, they were transferred to the Caswell Clinic in Wales. And when they got there, the staff couldn't wake Jennifer up. She was taken to the hospital and died shortly after of acute myocarditis, which is inflammation of the heart. There were no drugs or poisons in her system showing foul play. But June did say that the day before this, Jennifer was acting strange, slurring her words, and thought she was dying. A few days after her death, June said, "I'm free at last, liberated, and at last, Jennifer has given up her life for me."
So June did start talking to people.
Immediately.
Wow.
Immediately started talking. That's Wow. Yeah, wow. She was publishing her stories, talking to people, living her life. Like, she just, like nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
It's
That's
just
crazy.
wild.
That's crazy.
There's even, they did a movie, I think it came out in 2022. It's called The Silent Twins, and it's about them. Because they had a lot of published works. They had a lot, I mean, as you can see, Jennifer died in 1993, and they're still publishing her stuff today.
About to watch that.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Now, the next one is probably the most well-known. This one, I made you watch the video on. It's about 40-year-old Swedish twins, Sabina and Ursula Eriksson. They were born in Sweden, but as adults, Ursula was living in the United States, and Sabina was living in Ireland with her family. She was married and had 2 kids. Ursula came to visit Sabina on Friday, May 16th, 2008. They left and went to Liverpool, England, and no one's really sure why. Sunday morning at 8:30, the twins went to the St. Anne Street police station and told them that they were worried about the 2 kids. So Liverpool called to Dublin and found out that Sabina and her husband had had an argument the night before. So they think that they got into an argument. Sabina left, and she was worried about the kids' safety being with the dad. Next thing you know, the twins were gone. They caught a train to London at about 11:30 a.m. Police reports say that the twins got off the bus at around 1 p.m. at Kiel Services, which is a motorway service station on the M6 motorway. The report says that they weren't feeling well, but the bus driver said no, they were acting strange and holding their bags close and tight. He asked to search their bags, and when they said no, he wouldn't let them back on the bus. The cops were called, but the cops said that these 2 women were harmless, so they just left.
So not acting strange other than not letting the bus driver go through their bags.
Right. That was the strange part, is that they were just holding their bags too close. And they were like, okay,
well, I mean,
can't get back here.
It's a public bus,
Public
right?
bus, yes.
So, I mean, I don't blame them.
No.
I mean,
no, this would have been a different story.
If I'm in an area that I'm not comfortable with, don't know.
Right.
My shit's pretty close to me.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it close.
I'm not going to just sit there and throw it over in the next seat and be like, be all right.
No.
You know, it's not my house.
Exactly.
It's not my car.
Exactly.
It's a strange place.
It's a very public, strange place.
Yeah.
But at this point, you can see the twins on CCTV walking in a center part of the motorway. So picture a 4-lane highway with a center that is grassy and has rails on both sides. So you can actually walk in the grass, but you'd have to hop the rails to get to the actual highway part. At some point, they go to cross the road. Sabina is hit by a car, but only gets some minor injuries. The cops are called again, and highway agency officers, along with a Central Motorway Police group, who is being filmed for a TV show called Motorway Cops, they all show up, TV crew and all. So you can actually see footage, this is what I made Darren watch, of some of this online. While talking to the twins on the side of the road, all of a sudden, Ursula runs into traffic and runs into the side of a lorry going about 90 kilometers an hour. So for us in the States, she ran into the side of a semi going 56 miles an hour. Sabina runs into the road and was hit head on by a Volkswagen. Sabina is unconscious for about 15 minutes, while Ursula laid in the road because the semi had run over her legs. But her arms weren't immobilized, so while they're trying to help her, she's spitting on them and hitting and scratching. She's yelling that they aren't real. Sabina wakes up yelling, "They're gonna steal your organs." And she jumps up, screaming for help, yelling for someone to call the cops, all while she's fighting off the cops that are trying to help her. She pops one of the cops in the face and runs back into traffic. She was caught, handcuffed, sedated, and put in an ambulance.
Yeah, finally.
Finally.
I mean, good Lord. I watched the video and it was just like nonstop.
She literally pulled a Houdini, so they have a hold of her jacket and she just
whoop right out of
it. Where were you on restraint day at school?
Yeah.
Ursula is going to the hospital for a while since her legs are broken. But Sabina was shockingly treated and released into police custody. Police say, and video footage backs it up, that she was calm, relaxed even. She did tell a cop, "We say in Sweden that an accident rarely comes alone. Usually, at least one more follows, maybe two. They were like, I don't know what to do with that, but thanks. And then on the 19th, she goes to court. She pled guilty to trespassing on the highway and hitting the cop. She is sentenced to 1 day in jail, so they release her for time served. She's now walking the streets, carrying her clear plastic baggie that the jail put her stuff in. At 7 p.m., two guys, Glenn and Peter, are walking a dog, so Sabina started petting the dog and talking to the men, telling them that she was trying to find her sister who was in the hospital. She asked the men for directions to a hotel or a bed and breakfast in the area, but Glenn offered to let her stay at his house, and she took him up on that offer. At the house, she was acting really nervous and kept getting up and looking out the windows. She was paranoid. She offered them a cigarette, but when they put them in their mouths, she snatched them back out, saying that they may be poisoned.
I would have been like, so what about that hotel?
Yeah.
You need me to drive you there? You need a cab?
Right.
I don't know. What year was this? What'd you say?
08, I think, or 06.
Yeah, so Uber wouldn't have been there.
08. Yeah, we're in 08. No Ubers.
Uber hadn't been thought of yet.
Yeah. But you still had cabs.
Yeah.
But you got to go, lady. Time to go.
Need
Time
a
to
bike?
Go. Yeah.
I got a
I
bicycle.
got a tandem bike.
Got a skateboard. Take it if you want to. You can have it.
Right?
Scooter.
I can scoot you down there. But apparently this wasn't odd enough because Peter went home just after midnight and the guys just was like, okay, maybe she's cute. And they're like, I don't know. The next afternoon, Glenn called his brother about finding what hospital Ursula was in. Then at 7:40 p.m., Glenn was fixing dinner and went to borrow some tea bags from his neighbor. He went back into his house and then literally about 1 minute later came back out bleeding. He had been stabbed 5 times, and he told his neighbor, she stabbed me. Then he fell down. The last thing he said was, look after my dog for me. And then he died. Nearby CCTV shows that Sabina ran out of the house with a hammer, and she was hitting herself in the head sporadically, like she'd hit herself and stop and run and hit herself and stop as she ran away. A guy saw her doing this and tackled her to get the hammer away from her. She took a roof tile out of her pocket and hit him in the back of the head. She ran again, being chased by now the paramedics because they have showed up at this point. And the chase ended when she jumped off of a 40-foot high bridge, breaking both ankles and fracturing her skull. She pled guilty to manslaughter with diminished capacity, but she was sane again by the time she went to trial. Defense said that she was a secondary sufferer of folie à deux. She was sentenced to 5 years in prison, but with time served, she was up for parole in just about a couple of years and was reportedly released.
What about her sister?
Ursula was released from the hospital after she was treated, and she went back home, and then they moved to the United States.
So how big? I mean, she pulled a roof tile out of her pocket.
I don't know how.
It couldn't have been that damn big.
Well, where are they in London now?
Yeah, but I mean,
I don't know what their roof tiles look like in
well,
London.
most of them are like clay.
Is that because it's very rainy there?
Yeah. So most of them are like a kind of a clay or something like that, or slate.
Everything I read said it was a roof tile. Because here our roof tiles are pretty big. They wouldn't go in your pocket.
So basically everything went back to normal?
Yeah. As normal as it could be for both of them, yeah.
Okay.
They've lived their lives normally since then. It was just a moment of, this is why this condition is so
just had to separate them.
Rare and weird. Yeah, you have to get them away from each other.
Yeah, you just had to separate them, get them away from, but they're both alive now. And
yeah.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah, they do.
Just keep them away from each other.
I want to say one of them did an interview not too long ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they don't hardly talk about it, but when they do, yeah. Weird. You never know. All right. The next one is Australia's most famous case of the condition, and this is the Tromp family. We have dad, which is 51-year-old Mark, mom, who is 53-year-old Jacoba, and 3 kids, 29-year-old Rihanna, 25-year-old Mitchell, and 22-year-old Ella. So all adult children. They have a berry farm in Sylvan, Australia, and an earth-moving business. So they all live together, and they all worked together, and they would work 7-day work weeks. So if you're running 2 businesses, you're go, go, go all the time for no known reason. Even they can't really explain it. On Monday, August 9th of 2016, all 5 members of the family get into a car and take off north. None of them had their cell phones except for Mitchell. He said he only went along to make sure that they were all safe, but his parents had become increasingly delusional and hard to tolerate. They didn't have their passports or credit cards, so it was literally just cash. It would only be about 19 minutes into the trip that his parents made him throw his phone out the window because they said it was being used to track them. By 7 a.m. on Tuesday, they were in Broadhurst, and this is where Mitchell separated from the family. The remaining 4 drove east to the, I'm going to say, Jenolan Caves. And this is where Rihanna and Ella stole a car and left their parents. They drove south to Goulburn and reported their parents as missing. After that, the 2 girls separated themselves. Ella wanted to go home and feed her horses, and she was the first one to get home, and this was Tuesday night, and the cops were already at their house. They had found stacks of financial records in the family's house that showed that the family had gone through them before they left. What they were looking for, no one knows. They weren't in debt or anything either, as far as the cops could tell.
They still could have owed someone money, someone that wouldn't have had a paper trail.
Yeah, that's very true. And that's one of the theories, is that maybe they owed the wrong people money.
Yeah. Didn't we do one on the
Trump family? No.
I remember that name.
I bring it up in a couple episodes.
Oh, okay. Because I was always like, it's Trump, not Trump.
Trump, yeah. Now, Wednesday morning, Mitchell made it home. It had taken him a little longer to get home, even though he was the first one to leave the group, because he had to take several trains to get back. And both Mitchell and Ella seemed mentally fine. That wasn't the case for Rihanna. She had climbed into the back of a truck and the driver didn't know it. He drove about an hour away before he heard a noise, pulled over, and found her in a catatonic state. She didn't know any of her personal information, including her name. She was taken to the hospital and put under psychiatric care. Due to her mental state, she wasn't charged for stealing the car, but since Ella seemed mentally stable, she was charged. Now, where are the parents? On Wednesday, they were now south from Goulburn and were in Wangaratta. This is where they separated. Jacoba headed north again, somehow. No one knows how. She was found Thursday in Yass, where she was wandering in an agitated state. She was also taken to a hospital and then transferred to the hospital that Rihanna was in, so they were now together. Mark apparently stayed in Wangaratta. One night, he tailgated a couple. They pulled over, and he got out and ran towards them, then suddenly stopped and walked into the woods. The area was searched, but they didn't find him. They did start getting reports of break-ins in town, like at hotels or places where people weren't, but they were never proved, and it was never related to Mark. During this time, Mitchell and Ella were in the media, saying that they were baffled by their parents' paranoid behavior. Mitchell said, "I've never seen anyone like this or anyone conduct themselves in this way. I just really want my dad to be found. He's not dangerous. He's my mate, my father. I love him."
Did they find the dad?
They did. They found the dad on Saturday evening. Remember, they left on Monday.
Yeah.
They found him on Saturday night. He was found on the side of the road near the Wangaratta airport. He was taken in, mentally evaluated, and released to his brother, who was a cop. Now, Mark flipped off the reporters that were waiting outside when he was released. He did later apologize for that. So everyone made it home, physically safe. And some believe it was a mental break due to stress. Some believe it was due to some chemicals that they used on the farm, or some type of plant that was on the farm that they found near their water supply that they're saying could have contaminated their water supply. But their story is commonly associated with the shared psychosis theory.
I would think if it was a chemical or the plant, that once they got away from it, they would start, getting better.
You would think so, but Mark was still in the delusion 6 days later.
Yeah.
So they're thinking that he was the primary and everyone else was the secondary. Once they separated from him, that they were fine.
I mean, shared psychosis, isn't that mostly between twins?
No, sir. That's why we're here.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Do you remember the very first story from the 1800s where he had convinced her dad and all her other family and friends?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to be related.
Okay.
And that's why they use it in the Joker movie, because he is the primary, and Harley Quinn, you know, she was leading a normal life before she met him, and then boop, next thing you know. So it works. It fits.
I gotcha.
So yeah, that was really weird.
It's probably just more common.
It is. There's 2 stories I found with twins, and the rest of them were not.
Oh, okay.
But they are family.
It's more common with the family.
Yeah. Well, it's people who, because they spend more time together, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you'll see like this one and the next one, because I think we'll do one more.
Okay.
They're families that live together, work together, like they're literally together 24/7.
I gotcha.
So it's a lot easier. And Mark could have had, I mean, if it was exposure to the chemicals or the plants, he could have had more exposure to it.
Yeah.
And it may have taken longer to get out of his system if that was it. But I don't know. But 2 of them, don't forget, were in the hospital. So I'm sure they ran tests for things that would show up.
You'd think.
Like you have high levels of this in your system. I don't know. But they all just keep a low profile these days and just live their lives.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's wild how it works. All right. Like I said, we'll do one more. And this one is more current because it happened in 2018 in India. The Chandawat family was made up of 11 members who ran a grocery shop and a plywood business. So this is the 80-year-old grandmother, her kids, their spouses, along with the grandkids. So you have 3 generations that live and work together. The 2 shops that they were running were on the ground floor of the house. So they lived and worked literally in the same area. Now, the grandfather had passed away of natural causes in 2007. His youngest son, Lalit, became introverted after this. But one day, he told his family that he had been possessed by his dad's soul, and that dad had been telling him all the ways to attain a good life. He and 2 of the female family members started keeping a diary of instructions. There would be 11 diaries found in the house. It is believed that Lalit was able to convince the family to follow along with these instructions. A neighbor who always went on walks with one of the family members says that on July 1st of 2018, that family member didn't show up. Usually the shops were open by 5 and 5:30, but they weren't open either. So at around 7:15, the neighbor went to the house. The door was open and they saw people hanging. Police were called at 7:30 a.m.
No, this is going to be bad.
Yes, it is. It's going to be bad. 10 of the family members, so it was 2 men, 6 women, and 2 teens, were hanging in the courtyard of the house. All were blindfolded with their mouths taped shut, their hands tied behind their backs, and their feet were tied. Their faces were almost entirely wrapped, and they had cotton plugging their ears. There were 5 side tables that were kept side by side right there, so they're saying that they stood on them to get up there. The grandmother was found laying in bed where she had been strangled. Tommy the dog was found alive and chained on the terrace. He had a fever, but he was rescued and sent to a house for stray animals. Since there was no sign of a struggle, they immediately thought that this was a mass suicide. When they found the diaries, they said it was detailed out exactly how they were found, and that the grandmother couldn't stand, so that she would be laying on a bed. The diaries mention, everyone will tie their own hands, and when the ritual is done, then everyone will help each other untie their hands. So they realized that the family either didn't expect to die, or maybe they thought that if they did, they would come back. While it is widely believed that this was a large shared psychosis incident, there was an elder brother who lives away from the rest of the family, and he believes that this was actually a well-planned murder. He said if this was all done by Lalit and his wife, then their hands should have been open instead of tied, implying that Lalit couldn't have tied his own hands. So who did?
It sounds like a ritual or something.
There's a lot of talk about that too, because they're saying that in these diaries, they had written out that they needed to hang, but the grandmother couldn't stand, so she couldn't be hanged. So if they thought that this was what they needed to do,
yeah,
why was she done differently?
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, if you're going to do a ritual, you have to follow it, right? To the T. But I don't know. These were well-educated people. You would... They were.
Well, I mean...
That's how they've said. They're well-educated people, and they should not have rationally believed that they would be able to come back after hanging, but they did. So that's why they're saying it was a shared psychosis, that Lalit had the, delusion that his dad was talking to him, and he had convinced his family, like the entire family.
Yeah.
All the way down to the two 15-year-old boys.
That's crazy.
Which they say one of those 15-year-old boys was not so confident in this plan. He was the only one.
Well, he was probably the smartest one,
I'm going to say. But that's it. So those are all cases. I thought, what goes along with the Mandela effect with misremembering things? And I thought, shared psychosis.
Yeah. True.
Mass delusion.
That was pretty good, though.
It's
I
a
agree with
thing.
that.
All right. That's it.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. Make sure you guys tell your friends, tell everybody you know.
Yeah. Get them likes up, guys.
Yep. Tell all your cousins, tell your family members.
Tell everybody you live with and work with all in the same
Anybody
place.
that you have shared psychosis with. Till next time.
Bye.